40 Smith & Wesson, 1990s. It took the law enforcement world by storm. Came on strong. Departments all over the country picked it up. But it's almost gone now. Why is that? 357 SIG. Mid-1990s, it came on strong in the law enforcement world. Less recoil, perhaps, than that 40 Smith & Wesson that a whole lot of other people really liked. Does the 40 have an advantage with that bigger bullet? In this video, we're putting them head to head. Guy Miner here from UltimateReloader.com. In today's video, we're going to be looking at modern semi-autos for self-defense. We're going to take a little bit of a quick look at the history and some considerations for semi-autos, and we're also going to be putting the 40 Smith & Wesson and the 357 SIG head-to-head. Interesting cartridges. We're going to go into the specifications, the ballistics, the common loads available from the factory or that have been available from the factory, cost calculators, see what we can do as hand loaders to offset that premium cost for premium ammo. We'll look at our own hand loads, and we're going to take a look at the results from those hand loads, our impressions of shooting. We've got a nice pistol here, and come to some conclusions to share with you. So semi-auto pistols get blamed for a lot of stuff these days. People talk about them like there's some new evil thing out there in America doing bad stuff. No, semi-auto pistols started being developed in the 1880s and 1890s. They've been around a very long time. One of the early successful ones was the 1896 broom handle Mauser. You may have seen that in some movies. You may have seen one in a museum somewhere. That thing, I've read, was in production for roughly 40 years, and about 1 million of them were made. So this wasn't some little thing that about 6 or 7 of them were made and way back. No, this was a common firearm back before even World War I. Other early examples, Colt model of 1900, which had the 38 ACP, not the 380, 38 ACP, and it was a Browning design. Yep, the same Browning who gave us the 1911. 1902, 9mm Luger. 1902, you thought your 9mm Luger was something new and fancy? No, it's older than the 45 ACP. Good grief. Yeah, they've been around. By 1908, we had the 380 ACP, same 380 ACP that we have today in a lot of compact self-defense semi-autos. Moved up to the 1911, where I found happiness and stayed there. Sorry. There's a lot of other great guns, but a lot of people are still hooked on that ancient design from John Browning back in 1911. Also, I want to talk just a little bit about the terms automatic and semi-automatic. Honestly, it seems like only in really recent years, in the last 20 years, has the emphasis been on calling these things semi-automatics. They are semi-automatic, and that differentiates them between that and a fully automatic machine gun. Roger that, got that. However, in most of my youth, it was the automatic. And you think about it, it's a 45 automatic Colt pistol, not 45 semi-automatic Colt pistol. So that's the cartridge. Think about that. So if somebody slips up and says automatic instead of semi-auto, they don't mean anything by it. That's just the term that they have learned to use. All that history aside, you're probably not going to choose an 1896 broom handle Mauser for your self-defense or your concealed carry pistol. So what are you going to choose? That depends on you, what you're comfortable with, and how you're going to carry this thing, how you're going to use it. 1, magazine capacity. Is it even legal where you are? If you're traveling, you might want to take a look at not just where you are. Maybe your high capacity 9mm or whatever is very, very legal where you live, but perhaps not where you're going. So don't fall into that trap. Make sure that you are legal wherever you go. It's something we have to hurdle around. State to state, these things are different. Magazine capacity, physical size of the pistol. Obviously, the little teeny tiny single stack, flat, short, itty bitty semi-autos are very easy to carry and conceal. They don't weigh much, they're nice and thin. You can even put them in your pocket, ankle holster, belt holster, inside the waistband holster. Very, very easy to carry, but they're kind of rough to shoot, and to shoot well especially. A bigger pistol, some kind of a full-size thing, like maybe this very nice SIG P229 is something to consider. Bigger, heavier, more magazine capacity, much easier to shoot well, but a little tougher to conceal well. Think about what you can conceal. Do some studying on that if you need concealed carry. If you don't, if it's going to be your truck gun or your nightstand gun or something, you're fine with a bigger pistol. Power level, recoil. I know a whole bunch of people that feel like they have to have the most powerful doggone pistol they can get. No, you need a pistol that, one, does the job, that you can actually use for self-defense. Two, that you not only can shoot well, you will go out and practice with it. It doesn't beat you up on every practice session. So you're going to go out and be able to train with this gun and get good with it. Truly master it. Reliability. We're talking self-defense here. It does not need to be match grade accurate. That is a wonderful attribute of any firearm, especially if you're shooting matches or some kind of very challenging sport. But we need a gun that's going to go bang absolutely every time. It's going to load into the chamber, it's going to fire, it's going to eject, it's going to feed the next round, and so every time you pull that trigger, you're sending a round downrange to save your life, your family's life, somebody's life, okay? It has to work, and we can sacrifice a little accuracy for that. Sights have come a long way. Take a look at the sights on the pistol that you're looking at. Can you see them readily? Can you see them easily? If you see some gray hair in somebody, it's a pretty good tip that they really need some nice sights, okay? I used to be able to see the sights a lot better than I can now, but these bigger sights on today's modern pistols, they are a gift. They are wonderful. The high-vis sights even more so. Trigger. Trigger pull is one of those things that more pistol shooters mess up on and send their rounds going crazy directions because of trigger pull. Make sure that your pistol has got a good trigger, good crisp trigger, something that you can get smooth with, something that has a nice positive reset. You want a good trigger on your gun. It'll help you shoot better. So let's take a look at the history of the .40 Smith & Wesson and the .357 SIG. You may be used to me talking about things that were developed, oh gosh, way back when, okay? Pre-World War II, pre-World War I. Yeah, I like that old classic stuff. These are modern high-intensity cartridges, and they were invented not that long ago. I clearly remember when the .40 and the .357 were introduced as semi-auto pistol cartridges. The .40 Smith & Wesson kind of burst on the scene about 1990, and it had the ability to pack into a small frame automatic, a 9mm sized automatic, not a 9mm, but this 9mm sized automatic frame power that was the equivalent of the 10mm loads that were then being used. About 180 grain bullet, .40 caliber at about 1,000 feet per second. And that was pretty doggone good out of a smallish framed semi-automatic. Had a very rapid growth in popularity with the police forces all around the United States. Very, very rapid growth in popularity throughout the 1990s. And of course, the civilian market picked up on it too and said, oh, this thing fits my hand and it's a .40? Nice, okay. It largely replaced the 10mm and the .45 in police use, and also for an awful lot of private citizens who said, yeah, this is a really good compromise, a nice package of power and portability. That's the .40 Smith & Wesson, and it is, in my opinion, a good cartridge. We'll get more into that here in a bit. Just a few years later, 1994, well, there's a reason it's called the .357 SIG, because SIG came up with it. And it was intended to provide the same kind of ballistics that the very justifiably famous revolver load, .357 Magnum, 125 grain jacketed hollow point. The similar ballistics to that, but in a modern, higher capacity, semi-automatic pistol. And it does that. We'll take a look at that too. Very, very intense little cartridge. It does a fine job. It's also a little bit unusual, and I know there's some guys out there that really like their straight wall case, 9mm, 40s, 45s, all that stuff, and they take a look at that .357 SIG, which is a bottleneck cartridge, bottleneck pistol cartridge, which is a little bit uncommon. And they take a look at it and go, what is that? How come it looks like a little bitty short rifle case? Well, it kind of is. It's bottleneck, okay? It's a smaller diameter, but it's got the same head size, okay? And actually the 10 millimeter, the 40, and the 357 SIG all have the same shell holder when you go to reload them because the case rim's the same on them. It became popular, especially with some groups, some units, some agencies really liked their 357 SIGs. Had a couple of drawbacks and it kind of faded from the market pretty quickly. But is it a good cartridge? Let's take a look at that more. Both of these cartridges had a rapid rise in popularity and a pretty rapid drop-off in popularity. So let's put these two modern high-intensity pistol cartridges head to head. First of all, specifications. 357 SIG, well, the first thing to figure out is that it's not actually a 357. It takes a .355 bullet. That's right, it takes a 9 millimeter bullet, not the 357 bullet. You hand loaders, take note of that. You go trying to put your 357 revolver bullets in this thing, you're going to wind up with some problems. Go get yourself a box of bullets that were intended either for the 357 SIG or for the 9 millimeter. That's what you want to use. It's a .355 inch diameter. It's got a high velocity range, low end about 1,225 feet per second, high end up over 1,400 feet per second, maybe as high as 1,450. That's with factory loads, and it does that through 40,000 PSI maximum average pressure. So they pump the pressure up big time in there to get that kind of ballistics. The guns need to be built to deal with that. They are. 40 Smith & Wesson. A lot of times people like to say that 357 SIG is just the 40 neck down. That's kind of true, kind of not. 357's case length is actually a little bit longer than the 40, even if the overall cartridge length is about the same for them. 40 Smith & Wesson is a true 40 caliber, .400 inches, doesn't get much truer than that. Velocity range of about 1,000 up to about 1,250 in normal factory offerings. I know there's some light bullet offerings and some heavy loads that'll take that up higher, and I know you can load it down, but that's about where most of the factory offerings are, is in that 1,000 to 1,250 range, and it operates at 35,000 PSI maximum average pressure. Factory ballistics for the 357 SIG, it's modeled after the 125 grain 357 Magnum. They're calling 1,350 feet per second muzzle velocity for the factory. Puts us in the energy of 506. That's a powerful handgun round. My goodness. Out there at 50 yards, it's still doing 1,200 feet per second. It's impressive. That's the 357 SIG. And the 40 Smith & Wesson is a little bit slower, but has a little bigger diameter, a little heavier bullet. The 155 at 1180 is the nominal factory stuff. 479 foot-pounds of energy at the muzzle, and out there at 50 yards it's fallen off a little bit to still over 1,000 feet per second and 387 foot-pounds of energy out there at 50 yards. So it too is a powerful, potent cartridge. Common self-defense types from the factory. Well, with 357 SIG, it has fallen so far out of popularity and just kind of off the earth that it is difficult to call any of the ammo common anymore. But it is still available. You can get it. You might have to mail order it. You might have to seek some other source than normal. You're unlikely to go in just to a small-time mom and pop sporting goods store and find 357 SIG sitting on the shelf. If you do, congratulations. That's the unicorn. Hornady offers it in the 135 FTX at about $12.25. Winchester, Spear, and pretty much anybody else who offers the 357 SIG offers the 125 grain bullet at, or a 124 at about 1,350 feet per second. Hornady has their 40 caliber Smith & Wesson. All the companies still have 40 Smith & Wesson. There were so many more pistols made in 40 Smith & Wesson. I mean, America's police forces had these things. Yeah, a little bit of shopping doesn't take much. You can find surplus guns from police departments, and most of them, frankly, probably haven't been shot all that much. So they should be in pretty good shape. Hornady 155 at $12.50, and on down the line, they still have the 180 at about 950 feet per second. I've seen that out on the range, and that's about what it does. Winchester's 165, Federal's 180, Speer's got a 165. Everybody's got this range of bullets for the 40. And again, it's not as common as it used to be, but you are more likely to find the 40 than you are the 357 in stock at your local sporting goods store. This ammo is not inexpensive, okay? It's not super high priced, but you're not going to want to buy a whole bunch of this fancy self-defense ammo and go blow it down range unless you've got a much bigger budget than I do. So 357 SIG I found from about $1.50 to $1.60 around for the self-defense type cartridges. And 40 Smith & Wesson, because of the mass production, it's available cheaper, found it down as low as $1 a round and up to about $1.60 a round, depending, okay, on how fancy a bullet you want to get and that kind of thing. Hand loads, we can save a lot of money. With new brass, price of my rounds per load came out to about 65 cents each, okay? And that's for both cartridges. And then if I don't count the cost of the brass, if I just say, hey, I've got a whole bucket full of it here, I'm gonna load, and that brings the price down to about 40 cents per shot. And remember, that's where the good bullet, the Hornady XTP, a good self-defense type bullet, that is not an inexpensive practice bullet. So let's talk about how to hand load these cartridges to bring out all that potential that the factory says is available and the load manuals say is available. By the way, check your data. There's some interesting data out there for reloaders. I always go with the really good reputable sources. Hodgdon, Hornady. If I'm loading Barnes bullets, I go and take a look at their data. Just whatever it is, whatever cartridge, take a look at your data, get good solid data. Hodgdon has an online reloading database. You can get into that and it's got everything. It's got pressures, it's got the barrel length that they test with and all that. So get the good data first of all. Now, I used RCBS's turret press. It's only 6, it only holds 6 dies, but that keeps it nice and compact. I have kind of a small reloading area at my own house. So I took this press home and I was really impressed with how much extra space I felt like I had because this press is nice and compact and it works really well. So I used the RCBS turret press for my loading on this. I did do my priming off press. They have a very nice on press priming system. I just really prefer to do it with a hand tool, so that's what I did. I used Hornady dies for the 40, carbide dies, and for the 357 SIG, that little bottleneck case, I went with a set of Lee dies, just standard steel, no carbide, so I had to lube each case and then go ahead and size it and deprime it and all that and reprime it and go again and then wipe off all that lube. Slowed me down a little bit, but I thoroughly enjoyed good dies, good ammo. It was a great setup for loading the ammo for this video. The loads themselves, 357 SIG, I used the 124 grain Hornady XTP, 9 grains of long shot. Used the Winchester small pistol primer, just like Hodgdon calls for, and that worked out pretty good. That was near the top, but not right at the top of the load data for 357 SIG. Also with 40 Smith & Wesson, I was tickled to learn that long shot was also one of the very best powders, velocity-wise at least, in the manuals, so I just kept that. And again, 9 grains. I didn't even have to adjust my powder measure. 155 grain version, so heavier bullet of the Hornady XTP, apples to apples here, right? So 9 grains of long shot, and I switched to CCI small pistol primer because I was basically out of Winchester small pistol primers, and they work just peachy. Long shot is known to be very, very good in some of these higher intensity cartridges like the 357 SIG and the 40, and that's why I went with it. It was a very good, easy powder to work with. Flows through the powder measure just fine. Nice, consistent charges. When I weighed them, they were all coming up almost identical, and that led to some really good performance that we'll see here in a moment. About the pistol, I hadn't shot a SIG in quite a while. P229 came on the scene in 1992. SIG came out with it shortly after the 40 Smith & Wesson was introduced. Within 2 years of that, this thing was hitting the market, and what they had done is take an earlier design, they gave it a heavier steel slide. It needed to be that way to handle the high intensity cartridges. It's got a 3.9-inch barrel. I don't know what was the matter with 4 inches, but they went with 3.9, good enough for me. 32 ounces, it's got a good heft to it. It feels almost as heavy as my all-steel 1911s. They come in at 39 ounces, but really well balanced. The weight sits in your hand. More on that later. 12-round magazine capacity. So what you're getting in either the 357 SIG or the 40 is this powerful cartridge, good pistol, and you get in 12 rounds in the magazine, which is pretty doggone sweet. A huge advantage over the old revolvers and an advantage over my 8-shot 1911 as well. Before we get into much more on our shooting results, let's talk about the importance of training. First of all, do this stuff safely. Set up a nice safe range with a good backstop, someplace you can shoot. Remember your basics of firearm safety. They will help keep you safe. Think about getting some help from a real firearms instructor, somebody who is certified as a firearms instructor and can do a lot of good, not just shooting, but teaching shooting. Look at that. So, defensive handgun drills, what we're trying to do is we're trying to learn how to use our handgun to save us, our loved ones, or maybe even some innocent bystanders from Mr. Bad Guy. We want to incapacitate Mr. Bad Guy as quickly as possible. One of my favorite drills to do is called the failure drill. 2 to the chest, 1 to the head. This has been around a long time. It teaches a lot of things. 1, good shot placement. You can do it quickly. And the headshot, that's turn out the lights. If you have failed to stop Mr. Bad Guy with a couple of body shots, which happens. A lot of times handguns don't stop somebody right away, not with body shots. After that, I want to go into some transition drills where I'm transitioning from one target to another. Get a couple of hits on one, go for a couple of hits on the next one. My goal when I go handgun practicing, I actually make sure I set a goal first. I just don't go out and shoot. And in this case, I'm refining some real basic drills that I've done before many times. And my goal is to get quicker and more accurate. Some of the most important things to consider is your sight picture and your trigger control. Those are 2 real important things for accurate shooting. Also, our stance and our grip are very important, especially the grip. Control that handgun. Get a good firm grip on it with your support hand, but your shooting hand should be fairly relaxed. All right, I like to say about 30 or 40% of your grip is done with the shooting hand, and that helps us keep our trigger finger relaxed so it can do really good, precise work on the trigger. I do most of my defensive handgun training at close range, 7 yards, maybe even closer. So why 7 yards? 7 yards because most handgun fights happen at very close range, even closer than 7 yards. 7 yards was arrived at a long time ago. It comes from the Tueller drill, and that is what proved that a man armed with a knife can probably reach the officer with his holstered handgun before the officer can draw and fire and hit Mr. Bad Guy even once. Hey, before I get into chronograph results, I want to show you something. This was not from a hand load. This is a burst factory 40 caliber case that I've kept for quite a few years. This was fired from my friend's 40 caliber car. It burst while we were shooting together at the police range, and I kept it all these years. The pistol was okay. It blew the side plate off. We sent the pistol back to the car. They gave it an inspection and sent it right back. It's fine, and it continued working for many, many more years. As far as I know, it's still working. So I also have had a 40 caliber cartridge case blowout, factory ammo. That was 155 grain stuff back in the earlier days of the cartridge, loaded to pretty high intensity. Apparently, I was shooting it out of a Glock, which also has a not fully supported chamber, some people like to say. I'm not sure, but I know that we had blowouts from both the car and the Glock in 40 using the hot 155 grain factory loads. Something to keep in mind, especially when you're hand loading. Maybe you don't need to push it beyond what the factory specs call for. So, interesting note about our pistol here, by the way. You see 2 barrels, 40 caliber in the pistol. Real nice. 357 outside of the pistol. It only takes a minute or two to swap from one to the other. There's absolutely no other changes required. The recoil spring remains the same. The magazine remains the same. It all works just fine. So for not very much money, you can have yourself a spare barrel right from SIG and take your 40 and it can become a 357 SIG if you want to do that someday. Chronograph results. I was very pleased with this. First of all, 357 SIG, started our shooting with that, and we got an average of 1,404 feet per second with that 124. That's faster than the factory said it should be. Woohoo, baby! And you have to remember, this cartridge was intended to duplicate or come close to 357 Magnum ballistics with that 125 grain jacket hollow point from a revolver. Now, when I shot my hand loads, 125 grain, out of a 6-inch revolver, we got 1,408 feet per second average. This is 1,404. I'd say the 357 SIG is just as powerful as the 357 Magnum, at least in these light bullets. Does a fantastic job. SD of 11.3, that was pleasing. Extreme spread of 30 feet per second. Energy, 543 foot-pounds, and power factor of 174, which is just fine. Really, really intense, powerful, accurate little cartridge. I liked it. 40 Smith & Wesson, 155 grain bullet at 1,253 feet per second, exactly what the factory says it should be. 8.3 SD. My goodness. This stuff works good, okay? It really takes off in the 40 and the 357 SIG. Does a great job. 540 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. That is not a messing around load. In fact, it's got a power factor of 194, knocking at the door of 200 in that power factor. This is a good setup. Shooting impressions. I came away from this shooting the SIG in 40 and in 357, and I've got some shooting impressions from them, all favorable, frankly. 357 SIG, lighter recoil, less muzzle flip, quicker recovery shot to shot because of that. So for shooting strings of rapid fire, I found I could get those shots out there on target accurately quicker than I could with the 40. Didn't surprise me a lot, but it was nice to see that happening. Much higher velocity, okay, 1,400 feet per second. Yeah, that's pretty good velocity boost up over the 1,250 range out of the 40. 40 Smith & Wesson. It's known for having a snappy recoil or feeling like it slaps your hand. I found that to be true to a degree. However, the pistol is very comfortable in hand and it really wasn't a problem. I did notice that it has heavier recoil and more muzzle flip. I was getting up and off target more than I was with the 357 SIG, and as a result, it's a little bit slower shot to shot because you got to come back on target and squeeze again. Both of them were great. Honestly, I shot steel, I shot the cardboard target, shot across the chronograph, no problems whatsoever. Everything fed nice, everything ejected nice, and they were really good results on target. Head-to-head results, 357 SIG and 40 Smith & Wesson. 357 SIG, it does roughly match the 357 Magnum revolver cartridge as far as power and velocity. Rapid recovery on shots. I was able to go from shot to shot to shot pretty quickly, not something I'm really known for, but it was easy with this gun and with the 357 SIG cartridge. One thing that is questionable about 357 SIG is it has fallen so far off the radar that frankly your ammo and component supply is questionable. It's there, but it's turned into a little bit of a niche thing. For a cartridge that was intended to be put into use by police agencies, and now very few, if any, police agencies still use it. I think there's some out there who do, but not nearly as much as there was in its heyday, and its heyday was never all that big. Now it's pretty much a specialty. So if you want to go ahead and devote yourself to it as a personal weapon, you're going to need to lay in a supply of ammo and get good at hand loading it. Would help a lot too. I personally think it's well worth it for the kind of results that I was getting out of this cartridge. 40, pros and cons. It nearly matches the 10 millimeter in performance, especially with these lighter bullets. Nearly. 10 millimeter guys, don't get all upset, okay? I know you can load that 10 millimeter up to much greater standard. It's a bigger case, it holds more powder. Of course you can make the bullet go faster. So yeah, but the 40 comes surprisingly close, particularly with the lighter bullets, in my opinion. It is a powerful and compact cartridge. Should be very, very good at its intended role. It's been proven on the street, as has the 357 SIG. And it is known for that snappy recoil. I actually had officers that chose to carry the Glock in 40 Smith & Wesson because it fit their hand better than the big 45 did, the Model 21. And they tried the 40 for a while and then got away from it because of that snappy recoil, and they adapted to the bigger grip of the 45 because it had that slower recoil impulse. And I was surprised. I didn't expect to see that happen. So it does have that snappy recoil. I did note that. And out of this gun, it was simply not a problem. In conclusion, 357 SIG, in my opinion, for not having been very familiar with it from the past, taking a look at it here again for this article, it's too good to let it die. It really is. It might be more of a niche cartridge now, and that's fine, but you think about it, basically what you've got is a 9mm with a supercharger. You've put in a whole lot more powder and you've bumped up the pressure, and so you're shoving that good old 9mm bullet that you may like very much from your 9, you are now shoving it out 200, maybe 250 feet per second faster. It hits harder. It's a very, very good alternative in my mind for that. Power, velocity, accuracy, all very good with that 357 SIG. The 40 remains a solid choice. I like it just as much now as I ever did. I used to have a Glock 27. A buddy of mine talked me out of it, and I sold it to him a long, long time ago. Good cartridge, and you can get it in some pretty compact firearms, which is nice. And it's got the suds. It has done the job. It will continue to do the job. It's a real good modern alternative to things like the 10, the 45, the 9. It's just a good all-rounder. And I tell you what, those police surplus guns are out there on the market at a pretty decent price too. Either way, honestly, I do have a slight favoritism towards 357 SIG, but very slight. And the practical choice would probably be the 40 between the two because it's more available. That's pretty much how you choose them too, between the two. Are you willing to go that little bit of extra distance, a little extra effort to supply your 357 SIG with ammunition? Or if that's not a priority, you just want to buy a couple cases or load up a couple thousand rounds of easily obtainable ammunition components, then the 40 makes more sense. They're both good. If you value the size of that 40 caliber, I mean, we're Americans. It starts with 4. It's got to be good, right? We like our 40s, we like our 10s, we like our 44s, we like our 45s. That's all good stuff. So if you like that bigger bullet, then the 40's the gun for you. What I want to know, are you using either the fairly rare 357 SIG or the much more common 40 Smith & Wesson? Have you been using them for a while? Is this something new to you? If so, what platform are you using? Are you using a Glock, a SIG, a 1911? What are you shooting it out of? How are you loading it? Which bullets? Are you getting good velocity? Are you getting good accuracy? Are there any pitfalls to loading these things that you think that we ought to know about? They can be a little rough. I've got that blown case there to prove that. So drop a comment and we'll have a discussion. That means it's time to wrap this up.
I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, we're on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, where we've got unrestricted content, and Instagram. Make sure to follow us on all those channels. Ultimate Reloader also has a commercial solutions division serving law enforcement, the military, and the gun industry. We have some unique capabilities, including a comprehensive suite of recoil testing and evaluation capabilities, trigger profiling, and more. If you're interested in custom rifles like what we build here on the channel or gunsmithing services, you're going to want to go to rifles.ultimatereloader.com and get on the wait list. If you want to learn lucrative gunsmithing like what I show here on the channel, including building custom rifles and Cerakote plus a whole bunch more, you're going to want to check out the Colorado School of Trades, schooloftrades.edu. Thanks again for watching.